Hey, brothers, Matt here coming to you on a Man Talk Monday. Good to be with you guys. My first time to chime in. And, guys, I'm going to tackle a subject that I don't hear talked about very often, and certainly not amongst circles of men. The topic is this: how does a man handle loss in his life? How does a man handle loss in his life? Every man goes through all kinds of losses, and some of them serious, losing a relationship, losing a loved one, losing a career, a job, or losing a bank account. And then that there are other losses that kind of feel like they're invisible, but they're not. And those kind of things where a man feels like he's lost his honor or lost his status, his prestige, or lost love. But regardless of how subtle the loss is, every loss impacts a man's soul. And it seems like we don't talk a lot about that in our culture. Now, it's not that we don't like to win. That's not what this is about. But the point is that our culture is infatuated with who the GOAT is, who's the best, who's winning on the field, on the court, on the ice, who's winning on the job, who's closing the deal, who's winning in the boardroom. And everyone's talking about that. But I would pose that you will learn more about a man when by how he processes loss. And one of the foundational messages at Braveheart speaks to this. I'm going to read it to you. It says, "We believe that the work of becoming all you're meant to be is as much about loss as it is about victory. How a man handles loss, especially prolonged, sustained loss, says more about the character and quality of that man than 1,000 rounds in the winner's circle. Again, we believe that the work of becoming all you're meant to be is as much about loss as it is about victory." So, guys, not everyone handles loss the same way. And for some, it is extremely difficult. So, there are ways that can help us to deal with loss. I'm going to share 4 keys to handling loss. Here's the first one. And it's simple, it's kind of abrupt, but the first one is face the loss head on. Face it head on. Don't shrink away. I guess what comes to mind is a car crash. If you have a little fender bender, or if it's a huge, scary scene at a crash site, regardless, you have to face the situation head on, and you have to deliberately survey the damages. In some situations, you could be tempted, right, to kind of look away, but you can't. You have to face it all head on. You have to acknowledge it fully with your mind. But you also have to feel it deeply. You need to feel it deeply because if you don't feel it deeply, you may not realize how it impacted you. And as men, especially, right, we want to bypass our emotions. But, brothers, if you bypass your emotions, I guarantee you're going to have to return to the scene of the crash. So we have to understand it, acknowledge it, and take it in. And part of, facing the loss head on is we need to come to a place where we can accurately tell the story to somebody else. We know what happened, we know how it affected us, and we objectively understand what's happened. So the first thing is to face the loss head on. Second, we need to move through the loss. If life is a journey and we encounter difficult times or dark times in loss, we're not to stay at that point. We're supposed to journey on. So, to understand how we're to move through loss, I'm going to talk about a few things that loss is not, because sometimes we turn loss into something that it is not, and it becomes very powerful in a negative way in our lives. So, if we're going to move through the loss, we have to realize that loss is not a destination. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this before, but I've seen a man go through loss, and it's like he returns to the crash site and he like rolls out his sleeping bag and he has like a smoldering fire there and he's made it his home. Guys, loss is not your new home. It's not your destination. You're not called to live in the valley of doom. Loss is not a destination, it's an experience. The other thing that loss is not your identity. At Braveheart, we always want to emphasize the truth, and that is that our circumstances do not reveal our identity. You know, you could stare at loss and you could look at it deeply, like you're looking into a mirror, but guess what? It's not going to show you who you are. At Braveheart, we want to know what our values are. We want to be able to go deep into that and see those things that light us up, that show what our true identity actually is. The other thing that loss is not is that it's not your mission, guys. If there was, men are all of us, we want to just get her done, right? So some men will turn their loss into a mission and they will try to destroy it, annihilate it, or something like that. But the point is that loss is not your new mission in life. And the old term, your cross to bear when you go through difficulty, it's not that. That's not what your mission is. And your mission is to flow out of what? Your true identity. The other thing that loss is not is it's not your legacy. And sometimes we as men can look so deeply into ourselves and go down this path of shame that we think that somehow our legacy is now going to be tainted because of loss. But the truth is that's not what God has for us. And if a man realizes what his values really are, what his true calling is, what his true mission is, he will not fall into that hole of thinking that his legacy is at stake simply because of suffering. Now, number three, guys, is that when we're going through loss, we should not go at it alone. Don't go at it alone. You need to lean into community with other like-hearted men. Lean into other brothers like the Braveheart brothers that you may be discovering. I remember when I lost my first wife, she passed away. One of my friends came to me and all he did was like sit on the couch, didn't really say hardly anything. And sometimes the gift of just being there for another brother, that sense of presence, it just being with them and is a huge encouragement. Sometimes more is needed, words are needed. Sometimes you need to hear another brother say who you are because they know you. And sometimes they might even know your mission. They might know your true identity and be able to remind you who you are. So lean into community with other like-hearted men. The other part about this is that we have to lean into intimacy with God as well. Sometimes we get disoriented when we're going through loss and we kind of start thinking that God is indifferent to our struggle. But what we don't want to do is to silently kind of like be assassinating God's character, that he has like a throne of judgment. No, God has a throne of grace. And so in that difficult time, God meets us there. And he knows what needs to be said to our heart, what our true identity is, and our true calling. And so lean into intimacy with God as well. So, guys, number four, and the last, point is that we need to reframe the loss. We need to redeem the story. You know, one of the most powerful things that I've experienced is when another brother is able to come alongside me and actually be an encouragement to me and share about how his scars and his losses, right, that he discovered really how to endure those things because of the community that he had, both with God and with other brothers. And when we look back at our losses, we can redeem the story. Not that we're going to say that we like our losses, but that we see that those scars can heal and that we can continue to do what we're called to do as men. So, guys, if you're out there flying solo, and you feel like, you're not connected, if this kind of resonates with you, reach out to us. Go to thebraveheartmen.com, connect with us there. And then as for the YouTube channel, like the videos, comment, subscribe to the channel, share the videos with other men. All right, brothers, I'm with you. I'm for you. You guys have a great week.